Our first speaker tonight has been with SAFE since it began, and she's the point person for the Water Committee. You won't find anyone who knows more about Southern Illinois water and fracking and how they don't mix than Tabby. Please welcome Tabitha Tripp.
Thank you all for being here. This is a remarkable crowd, and I'm just so excited to see everybody here. So tonight what I'd like to revisit is a grade school lesson that I learned, and most of us have learned, about the hydrological cycle, where our water comes from, how we get groundwater, and why fracking is bad for this cycle. All right, so what happens is water vapor condenses and precipitation falls down. We get rain, snow, sleet, whatever your choice. Today I think we've had it all. And you get surface runoff. And the water is either soaked into the ground, runs off into lakes or streams, rivers, and eventually an ocean. Along the way there is evaporation and transpiration, which is over here. And it becomes our favorite thing, humidity. Rises back into the atmosphere, condenses, and forms water. So you see the cycle. We get groundwater from when it rains and soaks into the ground, which percolates and infiltrates into the ground strata through soil, sand, rocks, and ends up underground aquifers or our groundwater. We then tap into it with a well. We water our garden, we feed our livestock, we bathe, we drink. It eventually ends up back in the septic systems, seep fields, or municipal water treatment plants, back into a stream, and back into the hydrological cycle. This is the basic hydrological cycle we work by. In the state of Illinois, we consume on the average of 925 gallons a day. Now add fracking to that cycle. If one well uses 5 million gallons and it's fracked 18 times, that's 90 million gallons of water per well. If the New Albany Shale gets fracked, like the Marcellus Shale in the Pennsylvania area, it would require 1.1 trillion gallons of water. 1.1 trillion gallons of water. It's a lot of trucks hauling our fresh water. So they take this fresh water, they mix it with chemicals, sand, and they inject it at 15,000 pounds per square inch under the Earth's surface. Next slide. Where it comes back up, loaded with lead, mercury, salts, normally occurring radioactive materials like radium and radon, as far as the other chemicals they added to it, just to name a few. But then the EPA deems this water toxic. The EPA deems it toxic. So what do they do with it? They haul it off to be injected into deep wells underneath the Earth's surface. Illinois has 7,900 deep injection wells, which are inspected every 5 years by one of the 12 inspectors that IDNR have. Now all that water, that fracked water, is safely stored 8,000 feet below the Earth's surface, permanently, forever, removed from the hydrological cycle. So what happens when we take all that water out of the hydrological cycle? There's less water on the ground, it means less evapotranspiration, it means air quality, or less in the air, it means eventually less precipitation, less water to recharge our underground water sources. And we end up with lakes and rivers drying up, crops don't grow, livestock and wildlife die. Water is a finite resource. We need it for all life on this planet. A study conducted by Tetra Tech for the USDA in 2010 and also quoted numerous times by NRDC in several articles states over and over again, current water use practices are not sustainable. And by the year 2050, 85% of Illinois will be at some risk for moderate to high water shortages. Now add fracking to that. This study that I'm talking about was conducted prior to all the water extractions used for fracking. When I spoke with Dr. Suji Roy, who did the study, I asked him about the rate of water consumption with fracking, and he said that this will drastically change his predictions. But by how many years he couldn't say. That research was not complete yet. So if fracking begins, will it be 10, 20, or 30 years before we reach that high risk category? It's an ISGS fact that 60% of all water in Illinois comes from groundwater sources. 90% of our rural populations in Illinois depend on groundwater as their only means of clean water. So it goes without saying that water is the source of all life. And remember, we can't drink money or gas.
Thank you very much, Tabby. Our next speaker is Professor Emeritus of Industrial Sociology at Illinois State University. He's a member of Illinois People's Action and many other environmental groups, and one of the best anti-fracking experts in the state of Illinois that I know of. Please give it up for Bill Robb.
Okay, again, thank you. I'd like to go through the 3 issues, and if I have time, a 4th as well. There's some thou shalt nots for gas companies. Don't frack in a seismically active zone. Don't frack in the danger zone, which I'll explain. Don't frack near an abandoned oil well. We got lots of those. This is the Wabash Valley seismic zone. When you ask about earthquakes in the Midwest, people think New Madrid. Actually, this is a seismically active area now. There have been 3 magnitude 5 earthquakes in this area over the last 20 years. The seismologists at Washington University feel the next big one is coming out of Illinois. Where is the sweet spot for shale gas in Illinois? It's in the Wabash Valley seismic zone. That's where the industry will probably go first. This is just a brief explanation of what happened during the big one in New Madrid back in 1811. Needless to say, it changes the topography of the earth. If we have a bunch of shale oil fields that are under production and we get a big one, who knows? Southern Illinois could look a little bit like Kuwait after Saddam Hussein left. Remember when he lit all those oil wells on fire? You could probably kiss a lot of your groundwater goodbye. You don't want to frack in this area. The second issue concerns the distance between ground surface and where fracking begins. International experts at International Energy Association, a German panel of experts funded by ExxonMobil have declared you don't want to frack between the ground and 1,000 meters down. That's the danger zone. It just so happens that the shallowest shale field in the United States is the New Albany shale field, with the exception of the one area in the southeast corner of the state that's in the Wabash Valley seismically active zone. So if there's going to be fracking in New Albany shale, most of it will be within this danger zone. Doesn't make much sense, does it? Now, if you see a schematic by the industry of a shale field, what you'll be looking at is the Marcellus shale field or the Barnett shale field, and they'll be taking it down to 8,000 feet, and they'll be saying, see, it's safe. We're down at 8,000 feet. Well, guess what? They're not going to be fracking New York and Illinois. So most of our shale is going to be in an area where we run a very high risk of polluting our groundwater supplies. Notice this is the New Albany here, and it runs from around, you've got 600 feet to sea level here. This is down around 1,500 feet and runs up almost to the surface. Here is a study published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. These were wells where the fracking was within 1,000 meters, 3,200 feet. They were down 1,100 meters when this fracking was going on. When you get in this gray zone and above, you have combustible levels of methane in private drinking water supplies. That's when you can light the stuff on fire. It can also blow up a house. It can asphyxiate people at night. What you're doing under these circumstances is you're forcing people to move out of their home or return to the 19th century when they don't have running water. Those are the 2 choices you have. And this is going to be the fate of many people living in Illinois when these companies move into town. Now, you folks know about this. This is mostly for upstate Illinois, where people are not familiar with the fact that Illinois was number 3 in oil production in 1910. And as a consequence of this, if we look at the next slide, we have roughly 150,000 wells, historical wells that are inactive. If Illinois is like Pennsylvania and Texas, thousands of wells will be lost in the mists of time. The DNR will not even know where they're located. Now, they can find them with aerial reconnaissance, but they can't even keep up with the wells that they know. Here are abandoned wells, orphaned wells. They're unplugged. Some of them are leaking oil. They've taken out water wells of people nearby. They had 4,000 in 1997. This list, 125 pages, gives us 4,500 wells today that are unplugged. They say they're plugging 500 a year. We can find 80 plugged wells on this list. Now, the problem with this is if you can turn to the next slide, Barb, each of these wells is a fast-track conduit for methane and frack byproducts to move from where an area is fracked up into groundwater and even into the atmosphere. Because you can get a kick up to a kilometer away, 3,200 feet away. If they're fracking, they can kick into that open well and stuff's going to come shooting up to the surface. I think someone should look at this issue seriously before they let people in to start ransacking Illinois. Next slide, please. Now, what's this all about? What is this game really all about? I can tell you what it's all about. It's about these pending applications before the U.S. Department of Energy. I'm sorry that you can't see this, but that's the U.S. Department of Energy, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. If you add up these and these, you get 21 trillion cubic feet of natural gas that could be exported from the United States. Last year, we consumed 26 trillion cubic feet. These liquefied natural gas export facilities could export 80% of the gas we consume today. This is the game that's going on, because if you look at the price in the United States for gas today, it's $3 a million BTUs, maybe a little bit more, $3.20, $3.30, it's around there, it's 3 something. Guess what it is in Japan and Korea? $18. $18. So if you turn to the next slide, Barb, this is what's going to be happening with gas in Illinois. It's going to be coming down pipelines all the way down to the Gulf Coast, and from there it's going to be exported overseas. And southern Illinois will be turned into an export colony for the rest of the world. That's why there's so much big money behind this. It's not these little companies drilling the holes in the ground. Most of them are almost bankrupt to begin with. The big boys are in the pipelines and the export business. And this is the big money in Illinois buying off our politicians. So that's basically it. I could go on for another hour and a half, but we have some other speakers here. So thank you very much for your time.
Our next speaker is a research fellow for DeSmogBlog. He's written and appeared in The Guardian. He's written for and has appeared in The Guardian, The Huffington Post, The Nation, Truth Out, and many other outlets. We're very pleased to welcome him all the way from Madison, Wisconsin tonight, Mr. Steve Horn. Let's give it up.
Thanks for having me, everyone. I'm really glad to see a lot of people out here today. I'm here to kind of make the case further for why a moratorium is needed, and maybe if the other bill that's being proposed passes, why other avenues need to be taken to stop hydraulic fracturing in the state of Illinois. I'm going to show why the regulatory system, the regulatory route is rigged, has always been rigged. It's been rigged from the start. And I just want to show this is a picture of Steve Lipsky's water. He's a source that I've been talking to a lot in the state of Texas. This is water. This is actually his water. There's his former water that he can't drink anymore. He's a man with he's a family man. He has a child who's 2 and another 2 children who are 6 and 7 years old. Now his water comes from paying $1,000 a month in deliveries, so over $10,000 a year just to be able to drink water. He was abandoned by the EPA, and that's history, and this could happen in Illinois. It's happened. Steve Lipsky is just one person. It's happened to people all around the country where fracking has taken place. So just a quick history of the regulatory system and how it's been rigged by the oil and gas industry. I think it's important to point out that under federal law, the EPA cannot actually officially regulate underneath the auspices of the Clean Water Act or the Clean Water Drinking Act, because in 2001, the Bush administration, under Dick Cheney, who coming off a fresh stint as 5 years as CEO of Halliburton, an oil services company that does fracking, created the Energy Task Force that was where he met with oil and gas executives and asked them what they wanted. What they wanted was inserted into the Energy Policy Act of 2005, and what they wanted was something called the Halliburton loophole, in which the oil and gas industry doesn't have to disclose any of the chemicals it's injecting into the ground when it does fracking, and it doesn't have to follow these two laws. It's just exempt from following the laws that have been on the books for decades. So that's the federal level. That was what was on the books between 2005 and now. And then, so Barack Obama was elected in 2008, and lots of people had hoped that he may curtail the Energy Policy Act of 2005. Well, that's still law on the books. But actually what happened under the Obama administration is a beefed up version of the Energy Policy Act of 2005, because under his Department of Energy, he took what was at the federal level and now it's a state level standard for how to deal with fracking. There's something called the DOE Fracking Subcommittee that was all industry representatives, like the Energy Task Force under Cheney, and then one environmental rep, who was representing the Environmental Defense Fund. They came up with these standards for disclosure that are actually pretty much identical to the Halliburton loophole. And I think it's important to note who is the EDF and what have they done and where is their money flowing, or what's the money flow in EDF in the past couple of years. It's especially relevant to Illinois because a couple of co-sponsors of the Sierra Club, or not co-sponsors, but supporters of the bill are the Sierra Club and the NRDC. So under Mayor Bloomberg, he has something called the Clean Heat Initiative, in which gas is basically being promoted as a clean source for heating in New York City from the Marcellus Shale. That was an initiative that he teamed up with the EDF on. He also gave $50 million to the Sierra Club for its Beyond Coal campaign, which Chesapeake Energy also gave $25 million to. So basically $75 million to that Beyond Coal campaign is going to support shale gas as an alternative to coal burning. And then if you look a year later, now in 14 states, EDF is pushing responsible regulation. That's the type of regulation that's in this other alternative bill that has 26 co-sponsors in Illinois today. So anyway, I think I just want to say something quickly, that this is actually now a model bill in the state houses around the country. It's being pushed by two bodies. One of them is called the American Legislative Exchange Council. One of them is called the Council of State Governments. Between the two of them, this bill has been pushed in like over 10, 15 states. It's passed in Colorado, Pennsylvania. The original model is in Texas. And part of this bill in Section 77 is actually in your bill in Illinois, in HB 2615, which is the regulation bill, which, as will be seen, this has been a disastrous bill in many states. So how has it played out? There's an earthworks report, the year is wrong, it's actually from September of 2012, that shows that in 3 of the states where this bill is passed, these states don't have enough inspectors to even look at the wells. Up to 91% of wells in some of these states have never been inspected since 2008, so even though there's regulations on the books, there are no inspectors to oversee them. If you look at regulatory agencies around the country, they're being defunded, including in Illinois, which in the past decade, half of its funding has gone by the wayside. It now has 12 inspectors to overlook not just the gas industry, but any other extractive industry. It can't and won't be done, and that's actually the point of this bill, and that's why the industry supports it. Another example is disclosure, and what they mean by disclosure. In the first 6 months of Texas's bill, which was the model for the nation, the exemption for disclosing what chemicals are injecting into the ground has been utilized 19,000 times. one representative says that the exemption is big enough to drive a truck through. So that's basically what's going to happen in Illinois too. And again, the body that's been tasked to to oversee chemicals and what chemicals are being injected into the ground is actually just an industry front. It's being run by a PR corporation whose clients include the biggest lobbying firm for the gas industry, ANGA, Chesapeake Energy, again, who I mentioned before. And as I've kind of been pointing to, this is by design. They give the fig leaf of regulations, and it's just basically running roughshods over community in the United States. And now it's this model of how the United States does it is not only is the gas actually flowing to other countries around the world, as Bill talked about, it's also through the State Department initiative, they're actually going to other countries and saying, here's how to do fracking. So it's a double export commodity. So what do we do? There's a moratorium bill in the books. That's a possibility. If it passes, that's great. As of now, it has one co-sponsor. The other one has 26, and it's not actually a lose situation. If the bill doesn't pass, if the bad one passes, there's still many ways to fight back that have been done places around the country. I think the model that needs to be looked at is the Community Environmental Legal Defense Fund model. They look at what do we do at the local level with our local governments to get these industries out of our cities, municipalities. There's a great article in The Nation magazine from February called Rebel Towns, where it shows what they're doing. And the big thing they're doing is passing nature Bill of Rights bills or bans. So yeah, a good way of thinking about it is collective nonviolent civil disobedience through municipal lawmaking. That's how they describe it. They look at using the local governments to usurp state and federal government, because as has been seen, those two levels of government have been bought and paid for. And this bill has passed, these local bans and human rights bills, nature Bill of Rights bills. One of them was actually passed in the country of Bolivia in 2008. It's also passed in Longmont, Colorado recently, Fort Collins, Dryden, New York, and many cities around the United States are looking at this new home rule model of how to get the industry out of their communities. And then there's another community, Woodstock, New York, is actually looking at passing a bill, and did pass a bill on criminalizing fracking. That's a little more far-fetched of an example, but they actually did pass one. And it actually gives criminal sanctions to coming in your community and fracking. So it's just looking at making your community a sovereign. And so here's how that criminalizing bill works. Like I said, it's only passed in one city, but if you really want to start fighting back, that's one example. And then I'll just say that under Illinois law itself, under this 5th District Appellate Court decision, it gives your communities and municipalities, cities, the right to ban drilling in cities. So under Illinois state law, at least as of now, you have the right to do this. It's a next step if the moratorium bill does not pass and the other bill passes. Something to think about. So, I just want to close by this little quote from Margaret Mead, which reads, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed people can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has." So I think things will go well if you just keep that in mind and, commit to some of the examples of other cities are using around the country. Thanks for having me.
So are you getting the big picture? One thing that always kills me when industry says, oh, it's the patriotic thing to do. And as I think you're beginning to see, it has nothing to do with patriotism, and that gas is not staying in Southern Illinois. Anybody here from Johnson County? Me too, me too. Johnson County's been 51% leased. That means we're all fracked, right? Do you understand that? And it's not just the mineral rights. According to 2 attorneys that I've talked to, and according to the sample lease I have, and the information the landman gave me when I talked to her, that's your land rights too. So technically, we could have somebody drive up with the truck on our own property. I could get arrested for trying to stop drilling on my own property. I mean, and so Johnson County is just one of the 19 counties SAFE is working with down here, and there are probably many other counties that have already been 51%ed. So if you're in one of those counties north of here, you know, we would really like to have your help. We have a lot going on for counties, and my next speaker is an attorney from Mount Vernon, and after 25 years at the 5th District Appellate Court, first as a research attorney and then as a research director, he now performs volunteer work for nonprofits, including SAFE. Please introduce one of my favorite Italians, Vito Mastrangelo.
Well, thanks for having me. Thanks for coming. Thanks for the speakers. It's been great so far, and I've only got 4 or 5 minutes, so I don't have to cover that ground. I'll just refer to that. I'm going to go from the big picture to the local picture in 4 or 5 minutes, so strap in. The big picture is the use of fossil fuels, namely oil, gas, and coal, is intricately linked to climate change. So the first thing we need to consider is that burning coal, gas, and oil is affecting our entire planet. Now, the International Energy Agency says that right now, 2/3 of the fossil fuels need to stay in the ground if we want to keep climate change, just slow it down, not even stop it or reverse it, but just to slow it down. We need to keep 2/3 of the fossil fuels in the ground. Bill McKibben, the founder of 350.org, says that the fossil fuel industry already has 5 times more reserves than we should use if we want to keep climate change under control. So that's the big picture. We have to change our thinking about the way we use energy. Now, to the local level, the thing I want to stress the most is our health. Fracking contaminates the air we breathe, the soil we use to grow our crops in, and the water that we use to drink, that we use to feed our pets and our livestock. It's absurd that we could get to this point. There has been a discussion of injection wells causing earthquakes. They've been relatively minor, 3.0 territory, and the regulatory bill does talk about that. But there hasn't been a discussion of what Professor Rao was talking about. We sit over 2 major earthquake zones. The earthquake drill that occurred a couple weeks ago, the emergency management agencies and geologists were saying that our area is overdue for a major earthquake, 6.0 or greater. There's been no talk of what a well with toxic chemicals in it, what's going to happen if we have an earthquake that shakes that well. It's going to crack. There's going to be contaminated fracking fluid all over the place. The Bradley bill does not, and to get further into local control, the Bradley bill does not include any power for counties to control what happens within their borders. So we have legislators in Springfield that are telling counties what they can and cannot do within their borders. Now, cities, as Steve pointed out, cities do have some power. And at this point, I want to give a shout out to some of the cities and local communities that have expressed support for a moratorium. The city of Carbondale has supported a moratorium. Jackson County has, Union County, the city of Anna, Hardin County, and special shout out to Alto Pass, which has passed an ordinance banning fracking within its borders. Now, some of this takes action, okay? In Anna and Alto Pass, for example, SAFE activists, and Tabby in particular I have in mind, you know, they went to city council meetings, they explained things to them, and we need to do that to all the local legislators we can, and to the state legislators. You can write letters to the editor, you can call their offices, just tell them that you support a moratorium. You can join us for Lobby Day on March 12th. A bunch of us are going up to Springfield. We're going to visit legislators' offices and explain to them what our concerns are and ask them to support the moratorium bill. Talk to your local officials. Usually you can get through to them either by calling, go to a city council meeting and speak during the public portion of the meeting, and the same with the county boards. In closing, I'll say again that the Illinois Green Party is having a meeting tomorrow, and there will be a fracking presentation there. It's supposed to start at 2:30. And again, thank you very much for coming. Thanks everybody for your support, and to the speakers as well.
So if you look on the back of your agenda, you will see, don't let fossil fuel companies take away your power. You can take this and talk to your local officials. You can talk to the Johnson County Commissioners. You can talk to anybody, any local official in your municipality or in your county. And if you need help with this, SAFE will help you, but it needs to be coming from you, from whatever county you're living in. We're doing the best we can with a handful of people. Now it's time to spread that support out and get local constituents involved in their own communities. It's your chance to really step up here and keep fracking out of your particular county or town. So our next speaker was supposed to be Penny Livingston, and she had a family emergency and wasn't able to make it tonight. So we're very happy to have a local attorney and mathematician whose articles have been published frequently in the local newspapers, and he's going to...
Well, we have two rich attorneys. Oops, I didn't mean that. Two not very rich attorneys. One of them is Rich Whitney, but I'm Rich Fetter. And I'm here to talk about the moratorium bill pushed by the attorneys from SAFE, who wrote it, and Penny Livingston in particular, who can't be here. I'm going to be honest, I don't have much taste generally for that kind of political action, going to the state and lobbying for a bill. But folks, this is the ball game. We've put forward a moratorium bill. All the establishment powers have gotten together and said how reasonable they are, and they've compromised, and they've got big environmental groups in favor, and they have this regulatory bill. Okay, they say it's the strictest regulatory bill in the country. Not so. The strictest regulatory bill in the country is in New York, where they have a moratorium until it can be proven that fracking can be done safely. The people of Illinois deserve no less. Strict, whatever that means, it doesn't mean safe. Right now, the Environmental Protection Agency of the U.S. is doing a comprehensive, it's not so comprehensive, it's not a great study, but it's a major study of the safety of fracking. It's going to take them a long time to do it, and they're really going to measure wells and do scientific information. What sense does it make to rush into fracking now before the study is done telling us whether it's safe or not? Americans are full of this can-do attitude, sometimes remarkable. Sometimes it's remarkable that we have it. But we often plunge into things and then fix them later when they get broke. If we poison our water, we can't fix it. So don't start before you know what you're doing. Let's not make the people of Illinois the guinea pigs. That's why SAFE is supporting the moratorium bill. I don't have the other name, but it's Senate Bill 1418. We now have it in the House too with a different number. 3086. 3086. House Bill 3086, Senate Bill 1418. This moratorium bill calls for 2 years, no fracking, and during that time to set up an investigative task force, all sides represented, and scientific experts. This is a reasonable proposal. We need all of you out there supporting it. Whoever can make it on March 12th, we're having a lobby day. The only way we're going to tell those senators that everybody doesn't think this is reasonable is if we're there telling them. I don't like political action, but that's what we got to do. I'm just going to close by quoting from this piece that I wrote. If I can read it in the dark here. I don't think I can. So, I'm old, my eyes aren't so good anymore. Let me just say one thing. I wanted to say about the regulatory bill. It has some good things in it. When we talk about what's wrong with the bill, let's not say the regulatory bill is just bad. It's not just bad. It has some good things like, thank you, Bob, okay. Yep. I'm just going to finish now. The regulatory bill has a few good things in it, including holding the industry liable for damages after they poison our water. It's the best bill in the country for holding them liable after they poison our water. But guess what? Environmentalists and just plain ordinary folk would rather they didn't poison our water in the first place. That's common sense. That's reasonable. Please do everything you can to support the moratorium bill. Thank you.
So join us, if not us, who, if not now, when. Thanks, folks.